I'm Doug McKenzie.
And I'm John Ward.
And we're the co-hosts of the ABCs of IBC podcast.
Come join us as we share our unique perspective on the infinite banking concept as the creator, Nelson Nash, intended.
Oh. Doug, for those who weren't listening or couldn't hear it, Doug was counting down.
Yes.
Yes,
indeed, I was.
3, 2, 1. So, yeah, I know you're not feeling so great, so we're going to just let me do a lot of talking, which I do anyways, right?
Yeah, he wasn't too disappointed in that.
No, I didn't say, come on, man.
I don't like to talk. Yeah, won't go into the details, but I've been tied up in bed for a few days with a nasty stomach bug. So, but we wanted to put out some content for our listeners, and John's got some great topics for us to discuss. So,
yeah, well, thanks for that. That's always encouraging, right? So, yeah, I wanted to talk about, we know that if we could avoid talking or talk about infinite banking and avoid talking until they've already made the decision to tell them this is life insurance, though, of course, in the conversations, we say there is a death benefit, there is life insurance, because we know that people have preconceived ideas of the value of life insurance, and whether they even understand that fully or think about it, right? Because, of course, I've had my own iterations throughout my life of what I thought of life insurance, certainly when I was, in my 20s, 30s, 40s, didn't even remotely, I don't know that I would have really thought much about it, even though I had family and I did have life insurance. But, yeah, in essence, I never thought about it as something I could utilize throughout my life, that I would benefit from that, right? So did want to talk about this misclassification that Nelson Nash refers to in the book, Becoming Your Own Banker. So Doug and I were talking earlier, and, he states that, term insurance was the original life insurance, over 200 years ago. And I'm not sure, there might have been just 1-year terms, so over time, the cost, because you're getting closer to death, the cost to you, because the cost or risk to the insurance company is higher. So they're offsetting that with higher and higher premiums. And eventually, you say, I can't even afford this, right? So I dropped the insurance, and then the person dies a few years later. And yeah, so not so good. And he compares
that's how all other insurance works, though.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Like we
and
buy
I hadn't really thought about
year.
that, but you can't buy term car insurance or term homeowners insurance, or really get the costs fluctuate annually. That's just how it is.
You're right. I mean, the only term we can buy is a 1-year term, right? They don't sell, well, I mean, at least that I don't know of. I've only paid for my car and my home insurance, on an annualized basis. And, I might
and sometimes they don't do an increase like at the end of the year. Maybe I've had that happen a couple times, but then when they do, it's not like it just is that's the price you're going to pay, or you go try to shop around and get something cheaper. But I've never been given the option to like lock in car insurance for 20 years,
Right, exactly. Get a 20-year car insurance term. So, yeah, I mean, he stated, when we compare it to auto and home, for the most part, thankfully, this doesn't happen to many people, but they had coverage in case things didn't go well, right? That there was some sort of ice dam or fire at their house, or there was an accident, and you needed the coverage, right? Because you still need the house, you still need the car, and you want to be able to put it back together again, whether it be the house or the car. So, but people said, well, that was, an if type of insurance. If something happens, I'm covered, but not a when insurance, which death is when it's going to happen.
Are there any other
So,
when scenarios? I was just thinking about that. Well, I was just trying to think about that, right? I mean, I guess no, not being born, right? But your house isn't hopefully never going to burn down. Your car, you may or may not be in a crash. I can't think of any other when scenarios like that. Can you?
yeah, that it's definitely going to happen, right?
Oh,
We
it is.
know.
Of course.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I remember
yeah,
one time, funny anecdote, like they have those like free term insurance calculators online.
yeah.
And many years ago when we got a term policy, I think I was bored at work and I was just like plugging in random numbers I was curious what it would look like to get a year of term insurance at like 95 years old for $1 million. And it was like $330,000 or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen those kinds of scenarios where, sadly, somebody gets diagnosed with terminal illness, and they could have term, right? And the term's getting really expensive. Maybe the term ended, but they were able to extend it, right? So they could buy annualized again. Let's say it was a 30-year. On the 31st year, now it's $55,000 a year in
Mm-hmm.
premiums, but it's going to pay out 400,000. And so, if somebody told you you were terminally ill, I guess means you're going to die within 2 years or less. Yeah, you'd pay 100 for 400, right, or 110 for 400,000 for your family. So people do make those decisions. But if you felt healthy, of course you wouldn't, and you just let it go,
Right.
and never buy it again. And so Nelson basically said when the industry responded to these complaints in the marketplace, they came up with this thing called ordinary life. And he says this was a gross misnomer, to name it that. So it got really misclassified, is the way he puts it. And he says a better name would have been a banking system with a death benefit thrown in for good measure. And that is kind of how I don't use those words, but that's it's almost like I'm sheepish about it at times, with the way I couch it. It's like, well, but there is a death benefit. And Doug, I was talking to one of my clients, and he says, I try to talk to my friends, some of my peers, my colleagues. They're in the same industry, and I'm telling them what I'm doing and how helpful it's been to me and all this kind of stuff. And he says, because they really have a hard time when I'm talking to them about, they're not first year, they're not going to have access to, let's just say 30% to 50% of the money that they put in. And I said, well, take 30%, for all intents and purposes. And I said, well, it's not like there's nothing there. And we've talked about this a little bit, I think, on another episode. But, for that, I don't know, let's just say it was 300,000. If you say you have access to, let's take $100,000 just for easiness sake and say, or probably 10,000, but let's just say there's, 7,000 of it is available for you to leverage, and 3,000 isn't. But what is that 3,000 that you claim you don't have access to? You know, what is that giving you in return? Well, one of the things it's giving you is the life insurance, and let's say it's 300,000 of life insurance. So for $3,000, you're getting something, but you're also building this asset. So, kind of flip flopping back and forth between banking qualities in life insurance coverage, right?
Hmm.
And not trying to confuse the issue, but to say, I'm sorry, yeah, the life insurance, you still get that. It's thrown in for good measure. I
And
know,
it's a big deal.
and it is a big deal,
It's
obviously.
coverage that's gonna just intergenerationally build up wealth within your family. Um, and I don't want to say I get frustrated, but sometimes when I have these conversations, the majority of people that start infinite banking are paying premium with money that they otherwise would have invested in something, whether it be, most of the time it's the stock market, but it could be real estate, it could be business. And most of the time it's going to be money that they wouldn't have touched for a while anyways. And people get hung up on the fact that they don't have access to all of it right away. It's just kind of silly. But you're absolutely right. They are securing this death benefit that's never gonna expire, which is what, I don't know what the stats are. Last time I checked, I think it's like between 98 to 99% of term policies never pay out, something like that.
it's thrown around only 1 to 2% between lapsing by stopping the payment on your premiums, or you just run out of the term. The term's over, so the insurance drops off. So yeah,
Right.
somewhere
Yeah.
the 98 to 99% don't even ever get paid. No,
Right.
there's
And
no
that's an amazing deal for the life insurance company. I mean, the margin on that is absurd, right? The amount of premium they're taking in for all the policies that don't pay out far exceeds the 1 to 2% of payouts that they make. And they're really good at that. And that's how most insurance works. Insurance companies won't typically get into insuring much of anything unless there's a really good chance that they're, I mean, not really, an almost certain chance that they, are going to come out ahead because their business can't work otherwise. And whole life insurance is kind of a unicorn product like that, where you are actually getting a much better value over the long term than you are with term insurance. If anybody's listening that has a term policy, go check it out. They'll list what the fixed costs are going to be for the years after your term expires, and it
problem.
becomes prohibitively expensive. So while it may be affordable now, if you're in the spot as many people will be at the end of the term policy, where your health might have changed or you may become uninsurable, those costs become, really exorbitant. And Nelson goes through this in his book, where he kind of compares what it would cost for a lifetime of term insurance versus, having a whole life policy. And it's by far and away cheaper over the long term to buy the whole life policy. And you're
I
getting
know.
access to the cash that you've put in.
I know. I mean, back and forth, right? To the banking
Yeah.
qualities and the life insurance portion. I mean, and again, misnomer, misclassification, the idea that what you need to do and what A.L. Williams did, which eventually became Primerica, was to say, hey, don't be buying that stuff that has sort of a savings component to its death benefit, right? There's a savings in whole life, because now you have access to this cash value and leveraging it. Don't do that. Just buy term and invest the difference that you would have put in, right? So now you're going to get better returns because you're going to get better returns in these mutual funds, which, of course, when he pushed that through Congress, got everybody on board with that idea, and then did very, very well with his company. Primerica was hugely successful. I mean, the truth is the S&P from like I think from 81 to say 2000 averaged, again, we're using averages, but it was on the high end. It was like 13%. So it looked like, oh, this is going to go on forever, but that's not the average long term, and it's certainly not anywhere near. I mean, it's less than half of that. The real returns over, say, the last 20 years. Of course, it's always a moving target because it's always changing, but we have different years depending on when you do it and what.
Yeah, the date range changes everything.
Yeah, whatever years you're using, you can do.
And that's assuming that people act like perfect investors and never react emotionally to anything going on. And the reality is that most people don't do that.
Yeah. But the fact
I mean, when they've looked at this, that's why financial advisors can actually be helpful to some people sometimes. Not that, but a lot of times they can help people stick to a plan. I mean, similarly to what John and I do, honestly. But people are emotional investors, right? And it's hard not to feel a certain way when you see your nest egg dropping 25%, in the span of a few months. But what we do here, there's never going to be any of that, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, and that you can, because of what we're doing, you can take advantage of other things because you haven't been giving all your money away. You have been putting it somewhere for safekeeping that then can be leveraged and still be safekeeping and growing. But you can take advantage, right, as opposed to making wild and crazy moves potentially that can work out well, and other times they were a little bit like I've done, which is, it can be almost fear-based. Once you dig into the psychology of it all, you end up saying, yeah, I was afraid that I was going to miss out, or that, hey, I don't want to work forever, so I got to make these bigger gambles, and this looks like, oh, I might be able to make a small killing here, and end up with a pile of money, which frees me from doing this thing that I don't want to do the rest of my life, this work, this type of work, whatever it may be that's producing all this cash flow. So you make decisions, but you still, I say, you still can make, not necessarily wild and crazy, but just make decisions. Like, you could take some money from your cash value or leverage it, and, hey, let me go get some Bitcoin, because, hey, I'm hearing everything about Bitcoin and I don't want to miss out. And everybody that I talk to now is telling me you got to have some, so, hey, you don't have to stop the train and jump off and get onto another train. You can do both, securing the long term, and you can invest a little bit here and there.
You could do
I don't want to
do
get
whatever you want. That's the beauty.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Start a food truck, do whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
But it is kind of, again, you got me thinking with this. It's kind of it's a very unique, I was going to say unicorn, but I won't be dramatic. It's a very unique financial asset. And I actually find it really interesting that they made this product because, I know the insurance company's never going to do anything that they don't make money on, but they make far less money on this than they do on term insurance. And I think that it provides the insurance company a really good way to get larger cash flows, and they will be far more profitable on those, especially in the earlier years. But later on, this becomes not a burden, but it's something that's coming, and they really need to account for this long term in a way that they don't need to do with term insurance. And it is truly it's like almost equal benefit to the holder and to the insurance company. Whereas term insurance, yeah, I mean, you could argue that the benefit that someone gets is that they're gonna, be covered in case of an untimely death, but monetarily, the insurance company's just making a killing off you. And this just gives the owner, the whole life insurance gives policy owners so many benefits that I just haven't found in any other type of financial asset.
Yep. Back to this idea, what you had said earlier, which is it's meant, and why I got into that whole Primerica and A.L. Williams is because it's made out to be the most expensive way of buying life insurance is through, these higher premiums in whole life. Then that you should be paying the least amount of money for the most amount of coverage with term, which doesn't end up serving you, and it really just acts as an expense, thankfully, in a sense, right, that most people don't die young. They get a chance to live a longer life, closer to whatever life expectancy is at that time. But this idea that the real truth is that whole life ends up being the least expensive.
By far.
Yeah. Yep. And the benefits of the banking qualities, that you can be basically the borrower, like the bank is the borrower right now of your cash. And then they go off and do the stuff they want with it by giving you a little bit of money, is that you become the borrower from the life insurance company, and you go off and do whatever you want with the money. Which can be all kinds of. I was just talking to a woman the other day, and she was saying, yeah, they borrowed, the grandkids borrowed from a policy and went and traveled across the globe for, a year or so. And I said, yeah, you just can't take away that experience. It's not like now I have this house or I have these cars or I have all these things. But the thing that goes into your life wisdom, right? Your experiences, man, you can't take that away from a person. Obviously, if they lose their memory again, but otherwise, right? And the fruits of what that can do and has done for people, right? So it's not always, accumulating tangible things, physical things. It's what it's allowing you to do. To me, is huge. It's huge.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that.
Yeah, yeah. So. Yeah, so we just once again want to, when we share this, sometimes it's not just educational for people that might be considering the infinite banking concept, but it's also when you're trying to share this with family, you're trying to share this with friends, is to remind them that there's a total misunderstanding about what whole life insurance is, and then specifically how whole life policies are structured a particular way to complete the infinite banking or to implement the infinite banking concept into your life. And there's benefits to paying the most amount of money, which is really you piling up as much money into these policies that you can leverage for the least amount of coverage, so it's like, it's backwards. Everything's backwards.
It is, but then because you profit share with the company, and we've talked about this, you're a part owner, you participate in dividends. The death benefit winds up being, by the time you die, higher than anything you could have ever bought with term insurance. Like the life insurance company would just never even have insured you for that much in a million years.
Exactly.
It's,
It's
you know what I mean? And you didn't have to pay anything to get that. And, term insurance is never going to increase. It's just going to be what it is. It's going to go down. I mean, it's essentially going down every year with inflation. But by the time, someone passes away, it's gone up exponentially, unless they passed away in the first few years that the policy was in place.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to articulate this well, Doug, but to your point of, I think that if you're paying premiums, that part of those premiums, and when the dividends are paid, so the paid up additions is buying more life insurance, adding to the death benefit, same with the dividends that buys a little bit more, right? So it keeps you away from the modified endowment contract line, keeps it in a tax favorable environment, right? So if your death benefit is growing, over time, your cash value is going to have to grow by bigger and bigger leaps and bounds, because eventually, all the way, what it's doing is the cash value is chasing the death benefit, but the death benefit keeps running away a little bit further. You take a step forward and it takes two steps, away from you. So you're always like, I'm making progress, but it keeps going away because I keep building this death benefit, but eventually they have to meet. So that's why these things become so much more powerful, bigger generators of cash flow, because they have to speed up and now be taking 3 steps for every 2 steps back that the death benefits, taken, if that makes any sense.
It makes total sense to me. I totally get what you're saying, but my advice, if there's anyone listening that doesn't understand what John just said, reach out to one of us and, we can work on an illustration for you, because it's very easy to show you that looking at real numbers. But I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
All right. Well, I think that's a wrap too. And it was great talking again. And thanks for listening, people. We love sharing this. And yeah, as Doug said, let's talk and let's just, explore things together. It doesn't mean you have to do it. It's just, let's take a look and see if it's a better option from some of the other alternatives you have.
Love it.
All right. Until next week.
Have a good one, John.
Okay, you too. Thanks, Doug. Hope you feel better.
Me too. Bye.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the ABCs of IBC.
If you enjoyed listening, please hit subscribe and leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen. It really helps. See you next week.
Bye.